Today, I want to talk to you about trauma. Trauma is defined as a distressing or disturbing experience. Did you know that trauma can get trapped in your body? Let's talk about that. Welcome to the Pause First Academy channel. If you're new, my name's Kim Colegrove. I'm an author and the owner of Pause First Academy, where we do in-person and online training for society's warriors, protectors, guardians, and healers. But this information is helpful for anybody, no matter what your job is. Quick disclaimer, I'm not a medical professional and I'm not a mental health professional, so please don't take anything I say as medical advice. All right, let's jump in and talk about trauma. I have been working full time since 2017 with society's warriors, protectors, guardians, and healers. So, first responders, veterans, nurses, social workers, and others. Basically, if your job exposes you to trauma or the trauma of others, then this information is for you. All right. There is a book I want to recommend because if you are someone who has experienced trauma, I want to provide some resources for you. What I don't want you to do is let this go. You may or may not know that trauma can actually get trapped inside of your body. And when I talk to people who are suffering, very frequently it's because they are carrying a tremendous amount of unprocessed trauma, meaning they've encountered some very seriously distressing and disturbing experiences, and then they've just tried to carry on. So they've experienced or seen difficult things, and instead of allowing themselves to feel and process those difficult things, they just sort of shove them down, put them into boxes, put lids on those boxes, and they just keep shoving that stuff down. Well, that is an okay short-term strategy, but it's not a great long-term strategy. And I've met so many people negatively affected by this. So if you are one of these people, let's talk about this because I'd really like you to face things and find a way to process your trauma. So, the book that I'm going to talk about and that I recommend you consider is called The Body Keeps the Score. It's by Bessel van der Kolk. It's Vanderkolk. And here's what van der Kolk says about trauma. This is interesting. He says trauma is an event that overwhelms the central nervous system, altering the way we process and recall memories. He goes on to say trauma is not the story of something that happened back then. It's the current imprint of that pain, horror, and fear living inside people. So that's what I mean when I say trauma can get stuck in the body. Now, if you suspect that you're carrying unprocessed trauma, what can you do? Like, what's a first step that you can take? I'm going to first and foremost recommend that you talk to somebody immediately. Find a trusted friend or mentor, a trusted coworker. If you're willing, consider a counselor or a therapist. If your job has peer support, maybe you want to get involved with peer support, talk to a peer support counselor or peer support specialist, but find a way to take that first step because it is not sustainable to just carry unprocessed trauma and think that you're just going to be okay. It will eventually catch up with you. Now, on this channel, I plan to talk about trauma and a whole lot of other things that are negatively impacting people's mental, emotional, and physical health. But I'm also going to give you some resources, and I want to teach you some personal practices you can begin to use to begin to regulate and balance and mitigate and reduce your stress, and to hopefully help you begin to process some of this trauma and pain that you might be carrying. Okay, so I recommended that book, The Body Keeps the Score. That's a great one for you to look into. There's another book on trauma called What Happened to You? What Happened to You. You might want to check out that book. What I plan to do on this channel as she looks around wildly for her books, I'm going to go through, this is one piece of what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through my books, Mindfulness for Warriors and Wellness Warrior Style. And I'm going to extract from these books some information that I've shared with other warriors throughout the years. So I want to go through. Today, we're just going to talk about trauma, but these are some other things that I want to talk about in the future. So, I have an entire list here in this book of what I call key terms. These are where I define some of the primary issues that tend to plague people in these helping professions: the warriors, protectors, guardians, and healers. Okay, so let me just go through a quick list of some of the things that I plan to cover with you guys. Not only am I going to talk about trauma, but I want to teach you about secondary trauma and vicarious trauma, define what those are and how those might be negatively impacting your life. We're going to talk about adverse childhood experiences. This is a huge one that many people struggle with, but it's unconscious. They don't know that the childhood trauma or the adverse childhood experiences that they endured are negatively impacting them in adulthood. So, I'm also going to talk about stress and chronic stress, post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic stress disorder. We'll touch on those. And then some of the other things that we'll talk about are moral injury, compassion fatigue, burnout, emotional detachment, hypervigilance, hyperindependence, hyperresponsibility, and post-traumatic growth. So stay tuned for this ongoing series in which I will cover a lot of those topics just to help you understand what might be going on with you, because I meet a lot of people who are stressed out, overwhelmed, experiencing tremendous burnout, and they just do not understand the heavy mental and emotional load they're carrying that adds to all of their stress and even adds to physical ailments, illness, and disease. But that's not all. I'm not just going to jump on here and talk to you about all the heavy stuff you're carrying and your mental and emotional issues and problems. I don't want this to be, the big, heavy, negative channel, although I do think you need to learn about those things and slowly take a look inside so that you can begin to weed through some of that and process some of what you're carrying. But in between talking about each one of these topics, I'm also going to offer you resources, and I want to teach you some powerful personal practices that can begin to help you manage your own stress, regulate your own nervous system, and balance your own internal landscape. So, every time you come back to the channel, I'm going to be talking to you about some of these things that might be negatively impacting your mental and emotional health. But I'm also going to help you figure out what to do about that. Today's topic is trauma. I want to keep it short. I'd like you to start thinking about this. I'd like you to consider whether or not you're carrying unprocessed trauma. And I'd like you to consider checking out the book, The Body Keeps the Score, or any other resource you're aware of to help inform and educate you about trauma. If you are ready to explore some resources, please feel free to go over to my online platform, Pause First Academy. Just go to academy.pausefirst.com. Thanks for being here. I'm trying to grow the channel, so if you could give this video a like, subscribe, and also hit the notification bell, and that way you'll be notified every time I upload a new video. See you next time.